Bye week hell is upon us. There are 6 teams on bye. A lot of other injuries. All of our top players seem to be hurt. Here to help us sort us out is Yahoo's Andy Behrens on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Andy Behrens from Yahoo Fantasy Sports. Of course, you can follow Andy on Twitter over at Andy Behrens, believe it or not. Andy, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm well. It is a pleasure to catch up with you. It is great to be here on one of your many shows. I can't believe how hard you work.
I just talk a lot. That's all I do.
No, you're embarrassing the rest of us. Like you're always on video somewhere or on the radio somewhere or available via podcast somewhere, and it's kind of shaming the rest of us.
You know what? You do the same thing. You completely do the same thing. Baseball, football, you do it. I see all of your stuff out there.
No, you're a high motor guy. You're a true high motor guy.
You're always on Chris Harris's show. A mutual friend of ours. We had Chris on last week, as always. So yeah, it's what we do.
When Chris is on your show, do you ambush him the way he ambushes you? I'm sure.
He's pretty good about sending outlines. In fact, I feel nervous that I need to give him a good outline before he
No, he is actually a great outliner. You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
My big deficit is that I don't have walk-up songs for my guests like he does.
That's so much work.
I know. It's great. It's great. And the one he's got, one of his listeners created for me is fantastic. So I show up on I did a Reddit chat and someone's like, he's not Eric Jefferson. Yes. Harris listened to it. All right. So it's good stuff there. This week is crazy. It's bye week, 6 teams on bye: Cincinnati, Dallas, Tennessee, Jets, Carolina, and the Texans. At least it's not like all the heavyweight offenses at once, but certain teams are going to get hit really hard this week. Do you do anything different for a week like this than you normally do with your regular routine?
Yeah, there are 2 things that I'm doing this week that are probably not typical. Like, I'm always a pretty active trader, and I always enjoy having trade conversations. But everybody is acutely aware this week that they have needs. Like, even the the 5-1 team in your league has needs with 6 teams on bye, right? So I've been and I was kind of scoping this out before, but in advance of week 6 a little bit, the needs that different teams were going to have coming into this one. And I feel like I have a trade negotiation going on in literally every league that I have. And it's usually mutually beneficial stuff where they're down at a position, I'm down at a position. I have a 16 team league that I'm thinking of it now because it's with Chris Harris. He commissions it. It's a 16 team league. And there's no quarterback out there, right? The only available starting quarterback this week who is not on a bye is Tyson Bagent, who no one wants to touch. Is if not toxic, he's certainly not anybody that you want to be starting. So my roster had Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Gardner Minshew, and it's just an opportunity for me in this league to flip Gardner Minshew to a team that has Ryan Tannehill and Justin Fields. He thought he was going to be fine this week, and he's not. So I'm giving him Gardner Minshew, who I was probably going to have to drop anyway, but I'm getting I'm getting a little pick exchange for next year. So I know that's tedious, and maybe people who don't work in fantasy full time can't pour through every league and figure out those opportunities. But I have tried to do a little bit of that. I've tried to take advantage of everybody's hurting, even the good teams are hurting. So there's trade opportunities out there. And then the second thing that I'll just recommend to people: watch the drops this week.
Yes.
This is going to be one of those weeks where some of the guys that get kicked to the curb are a little bit better than the guys that you added in the main waiver run. I'm looking at the most dropped players in Yahoo leagues this morning, and I'm not talking about league winners here, but Tyjae Spears is in there, CJ Stroud is in there, Tank Dell is in there. Almost anybody on a bye. And then there's other guys that have been significant disappointments to this point who could definitely turn it around. Like Jahan Dotson is in there. Like some of the drops are really interesting, and I get it too. Like I'm not saying that anybody. Like I understand why you might have had to drop CJ Stroud this week. He's not playing. Right. You've got holes to fill. Like I get it. We're just talking about some really promising players who, to me, are they're probably more interesting than, like, I don't know, Keontae Ingram or Jordan Mason or whoever you were adding as a plug and play. So watch the drops. The drops are good.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I've made some of those drops, because I have to, especially league with like minimal bench spots. Let's call it the Ted Bell Superfan League, where we have 17 flexes, super flex, tight end, kicker flex. No kicker flex, but the thing is, it creates that tension, and it's purposeful. And I think it's a good thing to have a league like that where the waiver wire is actually pretty good anyhow. And then in a week like this, I mean, you really have to make some tough calls. And that this is the one exception to the my general philosophy of not paying attention to bye weeks during the draft. You've got a league where roster spots are tight. You've got like a super flex league and like just 4 bench spots, period. You got to make sure you don't have like 5 guys in the bipocalypse week.
Yeah. And if you do, I don't know. I've interacted with a few people on Twitter who have come to me and, like they're showing me their roster or they're asking a question about like got like 5 guys on bye. I don't know. At some point in some leagues, maybe you just have to take the L and be mindful of the players that you are tempted to drop because you just want to sketch in a lineup that might lose anyway, given what's actually on the waiver wire. So that's one way of approaching these things, right? I'm totally with you with regard to the idea of going into a draft and just not even looking at the buys, because we've already seen it with the number of injuries that we've seen this year. Like you can't make even short-term plans in the NFL. The NFL just laughs at that. It's a total chaos league. You certainly can't plan like 2, 3, 4 months in advance. It's a total fool's errand. And yeah, you hit a week like this, like, I don't know, sometimes you almost just got to schedule the loss and be like, hope it's a nice fall day and I can enjoy something other than the NFL because I ain't winning this one.
Yeah, although maybe your opponent's hurting too, and that's the thing. Scores will be down this week.
Yeah, for sure.
Safe assumption of that. And if you're in that terrible situation, I guess that's where you're more encouraged to trade, I suppose, too, where you trade out of it a little bit. Let me ask you this: how do you like to approach trades? Do you go by email, text, if you know the person that closely? How do you put a missive to the league, or do you go like directly to a person?
Depends on the league. In leagues that are full of like really active managers, those are typically leagues where I have some experience with those people already, and I'll generally send an email or text, however they communicate with me, right? Maybe we're using DMs on Twitter, but I'll approach people, and I usually approach people with I try to do the bare minimum of work, right? Like, what do they actually need? Versus what am I trying to get rid of? If it's simply a situation where it's like, what am I trying to unload? Like I'm thinking of a super flex league that I'm in that Brad Evans is the commish of, and like I'm 3-3, and I'm the kind of 3-3 that isn't like, I'm not super confident in this roster. I'm just going week to week, right? I'm patching new holes all the time. Guy's been hurt. I lost Nick Chubb in that league, and I'm trying to just hang in and make the playoffs, and then see what happens. The one thing that I do have in that super flex is a third quarterback, and so in that one, I've not spammed the league exactly, but I have sent out a couple of just emails to all managers, letting them know that I have a fully functional third quarterback. I'm usually not playing Sam Howell, who should definitely start in this league for somebody. I haven't found the right deal for Sam Howell just yet, but like, I feel like he's tradable. So sometimes I'll go to an entire league, or sometimes I'll just, I'll look at somebody's roster and I know that they're a reasonable manager and I know that we can probably come to something.
Yeah, exactly. I like that there. Well, that's a perfect bridge. Let's talk quarterbacks here. And I had Sam Howell in my notes as someone I wanted to talk about. I don't think he's a very good real life quarterback, but he's been a pretty good, a darn good fantasy quarterback the last 3 weeks or so. That Bears game is a perfect example. had a terrible game, but fantasy wise, he was fine. 300 yards, 2 couple touchdowns. Wasn't Fields that day, but still, you got by with him. I have him as a top 10 guy this week against the Giants. Is that crazy?
No, it's not crazy. With 6 teams on bye, I'm sure I have him top 12. I don't think I have him quite in my top 10, but it's an easy path for him. The funny thing is we haven't even really seen like the big rushing effort yet. And not that he's a guy that they're going to, you're not trying to give Sam Howell 8 designed runs a game, but he can do it. He was a final season in college. People know this, over 800 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. Like, he can definitely do it. It is really, now this is not a week 7 problem. This is a rest of season problem. It is really difficult to imagine him making it through the year. The way he's going to get sacked 90 times. Yeah. And I don't know that that's survivable. Like, that is the pace that he's on. And a little bit of that is just on the Commanders, offensive line, but much of that is on Sam Howell himself and his desire to extend every play forever to eternity. And then on top of the 90 some sacks he's going to take, it's all the plays that don't become sacks, but become they're 2-yard gains or whatever, but he's still getting hit, right? Like, he's
crushed in some cases.
He's flushed all the time. Yeah. And he doesn't just get down enough. Like, I'm super skeptical of, I probably shouldn't say this in case anybody's watching this who I'm actively trying to trade Sam Howell to right now, but I don't have a lot of confidence in him getting through this season. I do think he's really fun, and he would not be fun if I were a Commanders fan and I had to watch this week in and week out, right? Because I already go through this with Justin Fields, where you're like, throw the ball. It would be a difficult watch from time to time. This is not a Sam Howell thing exactly. This is more an offensive design thing. The other frustrating thing with Washington's offense has been I think a lot of us had just been hoping that they would just funnel the ball to 2 guys, right? And that ain't happening. We're seeing not that he's not a good player, but we're seeing a lot of Logan Thomas. We're seeing a lot of Curtis Samuel, who is a very good player. I get it, but we're seeing way too much De'Ami Brown, and I don't know if that's a favor to Sam Howell, who played with him in college. I don't know what it is, but if you just gave these De'Ami Brown chances to Jahan Dotson, it would fix a lot of Dotson's problems. So that's been a little bit murkier than I wanted it to be. I think it would actually make life easier for Sam Howell if they would just say, okay, your dogs are Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. Let's make this work. Anyway, this is a very long way of saying I think you're right about this week. It's a friendly matchup, and he's going to put the ball in the air. It's a little bit reminiscent of that. Not exactly like this. I don't think he's quite at this level, but there was that Blake Bortles year in which Bortles led the league in fumbles and interceptions and time sacked, and he was the QB4, right? Because entirely on volume, and because he had a great receiver at his disposal. And we might be headed for something like that with Sam Howell if he just stays healthy.
Kind of like the Jameis Winston 30 for 30 season.
Yes.
Exactly. We'll go there in volume. That's fine. What the heck are you doing with Jordan Love? When we last saw him, he had a terrible game against a very mediocre at best Raiders defense. He gets a great matchup this week against the Broncos. Having Packers coming off a bye and the Broncos coming off of a long week to prepare. What the heck are you doing with him?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to squeeze him out of your top 10 this week, just on the strength of the matchup. I mean, I don't need to tell you how just historically hilarious Denver's defense has been to this point. So it's a spectacular matchup. I feel like a lot of this comes down to how healthy is Aaron Jones, and is Aaron Jones just going to be a full go? Because I thought it was also pretty clear week 1 against the Bears. Man, Aaron Jones is not only great, he's probably your best receiver. Mm-hmm. He seems like he's the centerpiece of this offense, and then they had to veer away from it, when he went down. So if he gets Aaron Jones back and he's got a healthy Christian Watson, that's enough. While we've seen enough from Dobbs this year, that's enough weapons for him to be good, in spite of there being a learning curve and in spite of him still being a little bit developmental. He was, just in fantasy terms, he was scoring a little bit ahead of, I think, how good he actually looked early in the year. And it helped him to, get started with a very low degree of difficulty matchup against Chicago. But he's got one here. Like, I think I'd play him. I mentioned the league in which I have Justin Herbert and Jordan Love. And I gave it a little thought this week. I didn't do it. I'm going to start Justin Herbert there, but I gave it a little thought because, man, I mean, Denver gave up 70. Like, that is a prime matchup that I would be looking to take advantage of. I've already built a couple DFS lineups around Jordan Love.
Oh, beautiful. Love it. Love hearing that there. Got a couple quarterback questions in the chat here. Mateo asks, I have Russell Wilson. Do I drop him for T-Law or Jordan Love? Match in this direct matchup, Russell Wilson or Jordan Love. Who do you got?
Man, well, I would play Jordan Love there. It seems weird to say because Russell Wilson has some brand name receivers, but I actually like Jordan Love's receivers a little bit better, and I really like them better if Aaron Jones is healthy. But I don't want to gloss over the idea that Trevor Lawrence is just out there on the wire, and this is kind of what I'm talking about with those drops. And I also understand that people are frustrated with Trevor Lawrence because I hear that in my mentions as well.
Right.
I just want to tell people that he looks awesome. And I can't fix the fact that he hasn't been great for fantasy to this point. But I mean, the ball comes out of Trevor Lawrence's hands in a fundamentally different way that it does most quarterbacks, including my own quarterback that I'm watching every week, right? Like, Trevor Lawrence can throw some of these, like, he just throws darts on these like deep outs that, I don't know, you just don't see a lot of it. You'll get the all 22 view sometimes, and you can't believe that he completes some of these throws. Like, they're Matt Stafford throws, right? They're like deep downfield into windows that just are closed to other passers. So I think that Trevor Lawrence is playing incredibly well. He's also had, people remember this from a handful of weeks ago. He's been victimized by drops. He's been victimized by like his own receivers scoring like college touchdowns, right? Where they don't get both feet down. Like, there's just been a bunch of that in his season. Yeah. I feel like at some point we're going to get like a 4 touchdown game out of Trevor Lawrence. He's another one of those guys, by the way, like Sam Howell, who's got a lot of rushing upside. I don't know that the Jaguars will ever let him utilize it. They probably don't because he's too valuable as a passer, but there's rushing upside there. I think his receivers are fine. Like, and I just think he's got a really rare arm, like maybe a top 5 arm. So
I think you're right.
I wouldn't leave him on the wire.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one there. I don't know what happens this week with him with his knee, that turf, tough matchup, short week. But yeah, I agree. He shouldn't be on the wire, 100%. All right. Say you're in a super flex league. What is your desperation play for the week here? I'll give you some choices here, actually, because I'm just that, I'm a sicko as far as that goes.
I don't know if you can, I'm not starting Tyson Bagent anywhere, but I don't know if you can do worse than my worst super flex option. We'll see what you come up with.
I mean, PJ Walker, assuming Watson doesn't play. CJ Beathard, assuming Lawrence doesn't play. Mac Jones. I actually am starting Mac Jones right now, Andy, in a league. Brian Hoyer and Tyson Bagent. I mean, let's face it. That's who's out there in a super flex league. Maybe Ty God is available in a league, and we guess that Daniel Jones can't play. But
I'm sitting here in my Hawkeye sweatshirt, so I would start CJ Beathard in a second if I could. That's my guy.
Does he play tight end? No, then I can't start him. Sorry.
I absolutely love CJ Beathard. But I don't know, just tea leaves. I would expect Trevor Lawrence to go, right? Like, he's ambulatory. He's been at practice. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to go. You did worse than I was thinking. I'm starting Pickett in a couple leagues, and I feel terrible about it because I never think he looks good. I don't think it's a joyless offense. I don't think he's a particularly exciting quarterback. I don't expect more than like 11 or 12 points out of him, but that beats the projection for any of the running backs or receivers on my roster. So there we go. He's probably the worst call that I've had this week. I don't think I could trust. I like PJ Walker. Like, I don't know. He when things go right for PJ Walker and he makes a play, it can be a wow play. But like, he was pretty boneheaded last week. pretty mistake prone. And I think we also got a pretty clear message from Cleveland last week that they would really just like to run the ball all day. They just want to hold you to 10 points and run the ball all day and hope to get out with a win with Walker at the controls. I don't think they really trust him at all.
Walker almost made a facepalm wow play at the end of that game when on that go-ahead drive. Nearly threw a pick in the end zone there when all they had to do was just run time. Never have even thrown the ball. Nearly got picked off in the end zone. Would have cost them the game. Anyhow, so yeah, I agree. Yet he was still better than DTR, unfortunately. Who was just so bad against the Ravens. Just clearly not ready for prime time. And that happens. Unfortunately, I was kind of rooting for it because he's a fun guy to watch in college. So I was kind of hoping that he would be good in the pros, but at least in that first one, he was not.
Can I tell you, there's a weird number of people in Chicago that are still somewhat excited about Tyson Bagent.
I saw that headline in the Sun Times. Oh,
that was the back page of the Sun Times. The back page headline on the Sun Times was Bagent of Change, which is as much an indictment of Fields and the coaching staff, I think, as it is an endorsement of Tyson Bagent, who gave up a scoop and score and then threw the ugliest interception of the week last week.
Yes.
I just objectively, you couldn't watch that game and be like, oh, I need to see more of this. It was, he lost the game. Whatever. He's backup quarterback. Tough spot. I don't even blame him, but he did lose the game. I'm just shocked. I was talking to Matt Harmon about this the other day. I have a certain segment of Bears fan friend who is just, what a weekend for them, because there's a group of people that you will find in the Chicago area, and I think you know this, who the only college football that they ever watch is Notre Dame, right?
Yes.
So the only college prospects they ever see are people who either currently play for Notre Dame or are facing them. So they'd already come through the Caleb Williams game on Saturday night, and we're in the league chat, and they're like, "Oh man, I don't see it with this kid at all. This kid is, this is not my quarterback. I am out on Caleb." Never mind that he had absolutely destroyed them the year before. They're like, "No way, he can't handle the bright lights of prime time in South Bend." And so then, they're back in on Justin Fields. And then we get to Sunday, and then all the earlier season problems with Justin Fields are back, and then he gets hurt, and then Bagent comes in, and it's turnover, right? So they got nothing. These guys got nothing. They can't wrap their head around the idea that someone who underperformed against Notre Dame could still be a good pro quarterback. So they're just hopeless right now.
Oh, that's tough. It's tough. Well, yeah, it sounds like out here, the Dodger fans that hate Clayton Kershaw because he's had some bad playoff spots.
Yes.
It's just come on, stop. But hey, that's the fandom life we live. So be it there. This podcast is brought to you on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their ads. Thank you for your patience and your indulgence on that. Thank you to the Blue Wire Network. We love them. Let's talk running backs here. Austin Ekeler looked kind of sluggish. Cowboys tend to do that, though, a little bit against opposing running backs. What are you doing with Austin Ekeler going forward? Do you think he's all the way back? And is this a big smash spot for him against the Chiefs this week?
Yeah, I almost never think that somebody is all the way back coming off of a high ankle sprain like this, right? It always feels like that first game, second game can be a little rough. I will say they gave him the anticipated Austin Ekeler workload, which is a really good sign. He's said nothing to indicate that he wasn't feeling really good. It was a pretty good sign that he'd actually been involved in practice ahead of their bye. So he's probably about as close as anybody is going to be at this point in this. Everybody's banged up, whatever. He's probably about as close as anybody's going to be to, I don't know. What do we want a player to be right now? 90%, 95%, right. Nobody's 100%. So he's probably there. I think you have to credit Dallas to a large extent. The usage was fine. The results were not fine, but it's a friendlier spot in a matchup that should be truly a shootout, right? The Cowboys game, we kind of talked our way into it just in part because we needed it after a really dull and disappointing week 6. We wanted a shootout, it didn't quite happen. I feel like it's more likely against the Chiefs. Not guaranteed, but there should be a little bit of additional space there. I certainly don't think you can sit him. I mean, you waited all this time for your first round pick. You can't really send him to the pine.
Yeah. I think it's more do we use him in DFS? I mean, that's really the question. Cause it doesn't matter where I have Austin Ekeler ranked. I have him 8. That's not a sit anywhere. And and the fact is, even if you have two other running backs that you have ahead of him, you're still not sitting Austin Ekeler. Come on, he's Austin Ekeler. Emotionally, it's very difficult to do that there.
He's pretty interesting as a contrarian play, I would say, in DFS, right? Because he's coming off a primetime game in which he didn't look great. Nobody's going to be terribly enthusiastic about him. He's probably pretty expensive, but he is still Austin Ekeler too. Like a 3 touchdown game is always is always a possibility for him.
Yeah, that's right. When we last saw Aaron Jones, we were left holding the bag because we didn't see him. He didn't play. And we didn't find out until Monday that he wasn't going to play. We were kind of like, oh, yeah, he was limited practice, but he played the week before. We're fine. We weren't fine. He didn't play at all. Now that they've had the bye week, are we wading back into the water with him? What are we doing with him?
Well, I have no choice where I have him, right? Like it's almost every place that I have Aaron Jones. And I thought he was such a steal too. I thought he was one of the most obvious screaming values of draft season because he was something like the RB like 17 or 18 in terms of ADP, and he never finishes outside the top 12. That was I just thought that was a gift. Week 1 hits, he's great. He's the centerpiece of the offense. He finds the end zone a couple times. And even after that game, he really downplayed the hamstring. He was like, I think he said something to the effect of, if it was a playoff game, I would have stayed out there. If it was this, I would have stayed out there. Like it did not, people remember him getting stretched out on the sideline and he's waving up at the camera, right? Like it just didn't seem terribly serious. So I hope that what happened isn't like a significant aggravation of the injury. Because he's like, it unlocks so much for that team. Like he's one of the, I don't know. I'd give Christian McCaffrey credit here, Bijan Robinson credit here, and outside of those two, I think Aaron Jones is like in that tier in terms of a route runner and receiver, like not just a check down guy, but a guy that you can send him downfield and he can make plays. So it just unlocks so much for that offense. I started him a couple weeks ago when he was coming back off the injury. I mean, I just think that a fully operational Aaron Jones is way too good to sit in almost any format. So I'm really hoping he plays in a blow up spot.
Yeah, I'm really hoping I see like full practice Thursday, no problem. And then
that is what we need. Yeah.
So
I'm gonna be terrified if it's another week of like limited practices, right? Because that just did not go well.
Yeah, currently I have him at 10. But yeah, if he's limited, especially like Wednesday, fine. The Wednesday practice, I can almost always blow off, right? Obviously accepting the Thursday game, but other than that, I'm like, let's go. I'm all in. Let's go. If he goes Thursday, but we'll see. The Cleveland running back situation. Can we start both Ford and Kareem Hunt this week?
I kind of think we can. I made mention of it earlier. I think that all Cleveland wants to do until they get Deshaun back is run the ball 35 times and win 13-10 or whatever it takes, right? Let's try to get out of here with a weird score win. Let's try to win 15-10. And I think they can do it because that defense is obviously incredible. That defense, by the way, I don't know where their roster percentage is at right now, but because they had just played the Niners and had a bye week, they were available in over 70% of Yahoo leagues entering the week. And I think this was such a frantic, frenetic week on the waiver wire. I think there's a pretty decent chance that we look back and say, oh, Cleveland was definitely the one. That is the one thing I should have added in out of week 7, right? Because you start looking at their schedule. They don't have another matchup where you have to sit that defense. Like this is legitimately one of the very few defenses in the league that you just plug into a lineup and be like, okay, I'm done. I don't have to think about it again. Because they've come through their bye and they've come through the Niners. Like they're good from this point on. I think you can. But like we may also look back and say that Kareem Hunt was one of the safest ads that we made in week 7. Because I kind of think that workload is real. I think they're going to continue to throw to him. That it was great that it didn't really hold back Jerome Ford at all, right? Like he got 19 touches in a game in which Kareem Hunt had a ton of touches and found the end zone. I think that's what they want to do. And we can revisit it when Watson is back and maybe they change some things, but I think they're kind of terrified by what they have at quarterback right now. And if they can get away with running it 35, 40 times, they will.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I like early in the season after week 1, after they smashed my Bengals, I saw it was more than just a Burrow thing. It was like, hey, these guys are legit. Right. Yeah. And I held them through the bye in a couple of leagues when I could. And didn't use them last week because I'm dumb. but still,
I mean, nobody used him against the Niners,
That's true. They didn't. So I'm only kind of sort of dumb, but
they cover really well too. Like I know he ended up having a perfectly fine fantasy day, but like they were on Ayuk. They don't give receivers a lot of room, and they obviously don't give quarterbacks a lot of time. Like they have some dudes at every level. They have been really impressive.
Yeah. I prioritize Kareem Hunt over Zach Evans this week, actually, as a pickup. And which is, we'll kind of bridge to that. To sort out this Rams situation here. We know Kyren Williams is going to be out probably multiple weeks now. They're saying Ronnie Rivers minimum 4 to 5. They added Royce Freeman from their practice squad. They poached Myles Gaskin. They signed Darrell Henderson. I think they looked into signing Eric Dickerson, and a couple other guys off the waiver wire here. What are you doing with any of these Rams running backs? Are you going after Evans? Are you going after Freeman or anybody else here?
Yeah, they are really playing the hits, aren't they? The guy that I have added, and this is one of those situations where like I think you want to be careful not to just, you can't fill your bench with Rams running backs. It's just because most of them are going to be
strategy. It turns out,
no, most of them are going to be misses. Evans is the guy that I've added. I don't feel great about it. Mm-hmm. I threw a huge bid at Evans in one of the Kings Classic leagues, and I did it because there's nothing on the wire in the Kings Classic leagues, and like why not just blow your
got 3 flexes there, right?
3 flexes, 3 wide receivers. There's just nothing. 14 teams. There's just absolutely zero on the wire. So there was finally a guy who might play. So I just like unloaded to get. So
what
Zach
percentage
Evans.
of your budget?
Of what I had left, like 85%. Yeah.
Wow.
Because again, there's like most weeks there is not somebody on the wire who is going to get 10 carries, 12 carries. Like it just doesn't happen. So this was the one opportunity to maybe get that. And that was with me thinking I'm only going to get 1 week out of him. Today's news about Kyren Williams is I gotta stop listening to Sean McVay, right? Like immediately after that game, Sean McVay was like, oh, yeah, Kyren's fine. It sounded like maybe it's a 1 week thing. Even the reports a few hours later kind of downplayed it, low ankle, no worries. Now it is clearly a worry. That is clearly a pretty significant concern. So where I've put the chips down, they're on Zach Evans. I don't like they've taken that job away from Darrell Henderson so many times that I don't know. What are you going to do? What are you going to do if Darrell Henderson in 2 weeks time leads that backfield in touches? You're not going to like this time it's not going to stick. Like they keep taking that job away from Darrell Henderson. They'll take it away from him again. So I'm not going to buy that. Myles Gaskin is just sort of hanging on to the league. Royce Freeman is just sort of hanging on to the league. I don't think those are the answers. I'm also, unfortunately, I'm not one of these guys who, and there is a segment within the fantasy community that is like, oh man, if Zach Evans ever gets a chance, he's going to.
I was just going to say, there are Evans stands out there.
There really are. And it's based on it's based on solid information. He's been a super efficient back at the college level, played, against quality competition at the college level too. I get it. The league thought of him as a 6th round pick. It doesn't mean anything. The league is wrong all the time and he could blow up, but like, I'm not, I don't know. We've seen so little of him that I shouldn't be like some sort of tape snob on Zach Evans, but I'm not yet wowed with Zach Evans, but I do have a lot of him because I think he's the guy this week.
Yeah. I can't like dismiss the DeMarcado scars from last week where he was the pickup and then got 3 touches. Hey, but he got snaps. Great. They were all when they were trailing, but he was just there to block. I mean, it's like, it's killing me.
Yeah. Huge miss. And as soon as I start playing, as soon as somebody starts like a point per snap league, I'll care about what his playing time was last week. But at some level, we just have to care about like who is getting the touches. And I agree. It's a little weird that Ingram basically touched the ball every time he was in the game, but it matters.
Right. By the way, with your McVay comment resonates too. I think he's like Pete Carroll or, who I can't trust, or Brian Dable. Remember when Saquon got hurt? Oh, he might not miss the Thursday game right immediately after, or he'll miss 4 games. One of the two. This is a fine line between it. Come on, everybody knew he wasn't going to play, and yet they wouldn't declare him out. Just come on, just Stop.
We'll probably forget about it in a few weeks, but the discussion around the Saquon injury was one of the more hilarious instances of this season. Is it the highest low ankle sprain? Is it the lowest high ankle sprain?
Exactly.
Those are good. Those are good days.
Always love get to play internet doctor there. So always fun. Finally, on running backs, CMC, if he can't go, just leading with the most important running back. Let's go. Let's bury that lead. But Mason or Mitchell, who do you got?
Yeah, I have Mason, and that might be wrong. I'm freely admit that might be wrong. And the guy obviously entering the season who was the understudy was clearly Mitchell, and Mitchell has played well in the past. Mason just hasn't done anything wrong the last 2 weeks, right? He looks good. He's clearly not CMC. You're not gonna, he doesn't have any of that receiving ability. He doesn't really have not really like a lateral movement guy. But you give him a head of steam and you give him a free run at the line of scrimmage, and you can't arm tackle him anymore, right? Like, he's a big dude. He's found the end zone in each of the last couple of weeks, scored the go-ahead touchdown a week ago against Cleveland. So he's played very well. And sometimes it's wrong, but my general tendency is if something is working for a team, I don't expect them to veer away from it. Especially in a situation like Mitchell. That might happen. They'll probably give them both. I don't know if it'll be 50-50. I don't know if it'll be 60-40, but we'll definitely see them both on the field. I do, and this isn't because I don't have like a ton of Mitchell or Mason or anything like that, but I think, and who am I to question Kyle Shanahan? But I do feel like they need to get Christian McCaffrey off this 400 touch pace. I
agree with that.
Yeah. That's wild to me. And I still had him as, obviously a, top 3 fantasy pick coming into the season, which admittedly it was too low. He should have been my number 1 fantasy pick. But that was even based on the idea that McCaffrey would have the sort of job share with Eli Mitchell that he had last year when they were both healthy, which was really like McCaffrey gets 16 touches and Mitchell gets 10 or 11. And I think that the goal for that team should be, let's just get McCaffrey to January healthy, or as healthy as he can possibly be. I don't really get what they've been. I don't know. It's fine. It's great for fantasy. I mean, we love a guy getting 390, 400 touches. It's just, what is that going to turn him into by December or January? That would be my main concern if I were a Niners fan.
Yeah, I agree. And I think because Mitchell got hurt, that might have changed some of their plans. And now Mason's kind of entered the circle of trust, and maybe we'll see that regardless now. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm prioritizing Mason over Mitchell, but I'm definitely, if I've got Mitchell, I might be starting him this week. The problem is we have to wait till Monday. I don't trust the Niners to let us know, because they don't let us know. And like, for instance, with Debo, they were very vague until the very end a couple of weeks ago. I expect, same with Ayuk. I think that was a Thursday night game where he missed. So at least we had the early decision, but I don't think they'll be very forthcoming. And I think when you have to wait until the very end, it's going to be just a nightmare. So if I have CMC, I got to make sure I have one of those other 2 backs this week. I think that's the answer there. And then I can play chicken. Otherwise, I don't know. It's going to be a very difficult start any of these guys this week.
Yeah, I can never relate to an oblique injury. Like, I legitimately don't think I have obliques. I don't even know what they are, right? Like, that's just something I was either born without it or I've never developed it. Like, some injuries I can relate to and I've experienced. I have no idea what this is.
Come on, you're a gym rat. Don't lie. You're there. You're lifting weights 8 days a week. Come on. All right. Before we move on to receivers, quick note from our sponsor at Circa. Get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's Big Game Viewing Party. Massive screen, booming game sound, and a view of pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun with daybeds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Or touchdown at the world's largest sportsbook, Circa Sports, for the Big Game Bash. 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences on February 11th. The big game parties only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. Thanks to Circa, as always, for sponsoring us and hosting us in our summer conference that we did the last few years. Had a good time there. I'm here with Andy.
I want to go there. That sounds awesome, actually.
It is awesome, dude. The pool is crazy. The sports book is crazier. I mean, they even have like TVs everywhere too. I mean, they try to host fantasy leagues. They've worked with us before. We've had, we do we have our summer conference there. Circa's great. It's super fun.
I gotta say, I don't usually like interrupt a podcast host to say, "Oh, I like what I'm hearing from your advertiser," but that's pretty awesome. That was very effective ad copy. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and I play their Survivor contest. They've really and the owner of the casino is a huge football guy. So he comes like we have a Radio Row thing there. They have a Radio Row thing there to promote their contest, and they flew us out there. So Nick Whalen and I did a couple shows from there. The owner of the casino comes by. A couple of their other people come by. And they're into it. This is their strategy. Is they want to get.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's really cool. He's a big Lions guy, actually. Derek Stevens is. So he's living his best life right now.
Oh, so he might actually be at the big game.
Yeah, I would assume he would be for sure. If I think he can afford it. So we'll see about that. Let's talk wide receivers. Calvin Ridley. He's beguiling. He looks so good at times.
Yeah.
The Atlanta game, week 1 against the Colts. Other weeks he's looked terrible. He had the 2 false start game, kind of disappeared last week against the Colts. Now, granted, they didn't need him. What are you doing with Calvin Ridley this week in your rankings, and how do you treat him generally?
Yeah, well, again, we have 6 teams sidelined, right? So, like, I probably in a normal week, if everybody were active, I would not have him inside the top 20, but I have him sort of fringy inside the top 20. He's sort of in that Chris Godwin range for me. I think I have Godwin 1 spot ahead. Some of this just comes down to how good I'm stubborn with Trevor Lawrence. I just think Lawrence is playing. He's playing well above wherever he is in the year-to-date like fantasy standings. I think Lawrence is playing awesome right now. I definitely got too enthusiastic about Ridley off of week 1 because week 1 just had, especially the first half of that game in week 1, that was like the primary game that I was watching in addition to red zone and all that. And it wasn't just that Ridley was getting all this work. He was getting all this work and nobody else was in the camera frame with him. Like he was losing people. I really thought, wow, this is. I mean, it's like he missed no time at all. And I thought we were right back to old Calvin Ridley. And then the subsequent weeks were just, you ran through it, right? Like drop passes and just mental errors. And it hasn't been great. I do certainly hope that by the back half of the season, we get something pretty close to vintage Calvin Ridley because we've seen glimpses of it. I am playing him in the handful of places where I've got him. But again, like coming out of week 1, I was like, damn it, this is a wide receiver 1, and I don't have nearly enough Calvin Ridley, and we're clearly not there.
Yeah. And I'm bummed about that. I've got him in my fishbowl team, which is just awful. One of the worst teams I've just drafted. I mean, yeah. Yes. No one held a gun to my head and made me take Cam Akers or Rashad Penny. I did that. I did that at a live draft, no less, and didn't even get anybody giving me crap for it either. I mean, come on. People tell me I'm stupid for that. I save me from myself. But anyways, Ridley is on that team, and I was like, yes, I got a big windfall there. And I have a wide receiver heavy team there. It just turns it's just a heavy team.
I have a great fishbowl team that is not exactly we're not defending well. I seem to be giving up a lot of points every week, but I have a
bad virtual defense again. I hate that.
I mean, that's one of those leagues where the fact that I have Sam Laporta everywhere has really been beneficial in fishbowl. A second tight end in fishbowl is a big deal.
Yeah, exactly right. Can I interest you in 11 targets? Yes, you can. Yeah, all Iowa tight ends I will be drafting in the future. I've learned my lesson again and again. Courtland Sutton. Yeah, I know exactly. I see him make these plays at times that are like, damn, this is a really good receiver. And then I see him make other plays. I'm like, well, what are you even thinking? The Miami game had it all. He had the good and the bad. It's just like mind-bending fumbles and drops, but also a couple of incredible catches. Again, apocalypse week. We got to start him if you have him. But what's your thoughts generally on him?
Yeah, got to start him. I think it is pretty clear at this point that Courtland Sutton, enough time has passed since the ACL that I don't think he's going to get. Not that I thought he was a superstar before the ACL, but he was super productive, right? And he'd get a little separation, and I don't think we're getting back there. Like I think this is a nice player. I think he's a starting receiver. I don't think he's a star. I don't think he's going to Pro Bowls. And I kind of think the same about Jerry Jeudy too. I've never been like a huge Jeudy guy. I know that there's a lot of people who are just like, oh, he's never been healthy and in a good environment at the right time. I appreciate that, I guess. We've just never seen it for any extended period of time with Jeudy. We have seen it with Sutton, but again, I don't know that we're getting back to those days. I think actually what I am really hoping for in the Denver receiving core right now, and this is not what you asked, but I am definitely hoping that somebody gets dealt. And it's pretty, I don't know, you believe rumors, they're definitely trying to talk to teams about Jerry Jeudy. If someone gets dealt, then maybe Marvin Mims gets on the field. And if Marvin Mims
paying attention to the drops,
Yeah. And I would totally get it if people are launching Marvin Mims because he's barely playing. Obviously when he plays, there's big play potential, but he's barely playing. You can't start him. And if you can't trade a guy and you won't start a guy, he's a drop, right? So I get it. But man, if Jeudy leaves, if anybody leaves, there is a very clear path to Marvin Mims being something. And he's, his ADOT is something like 25 yards right now, right? Like when he's on the field, it is a high yield opportunity and he's caught almost everything. He was a big play kid in college. So I'm sure a lot of this is just about, run game responsibilities. And there's all sorts of good reasons why rookie receivers don't play as much as fantasy managers think they should. I'm sure it's all valid, but if they trade Jeudy, Mims is going to have to see the field a little bit more, and that could get exciting.
No, we're going to see more of Derek Johnson. What are you talking about?
I know.
Derek Johnson fly patterns. Let's go. Let's do this. But, the thing is, the Jets game on Mims, he fumbled a punt return. He fumbled a toss on a trick play. And I wonder if that got him buried a little bit there, too, last week against the Chiefs, because he wasn't even on the field, Andy. And that game, I was on the Chiefs for the spread. I had a little Jeudy and Williams going on, so I was frustrated there. But I was just as a football watcher. That team just made me want to pull my hair out there. It was just such a bad team, just making dumb decisions all game long.
The agonizing thing with Mims is that, he's so good in the role that where Russell Wilson can thrive, right? Like Russell Wilson is definitely like a trophy hunting quarterback. He is an extend the play. Let's get it 40 yards downfield like that. That was life with Metcalf and Lockett. Like that's what he loves to do. And he's been great at it over the course of his career. And Mims is that guy. Mims is he hasn't really, other than the ball security issues against the Jets, he hasn't actually like dropped a thing this year. He is great on downfield throws and he just suits Russell Wilson's game so well. And that is a big part of why it's so frustrating not to see him out there.
Absolutely. Very frustrating indeed. Let's move on to another frustrating situation, the Kansas City Chiefs receiving core. Any hope? Have you seen any glimpses of hope from Rashee Rice or maybe Tony or anybody else? Or are they just going to muddle through all year?
Yeah, I think they muddle. Well, I mean, your hope, I don't know who is going to shake free across the league, but your hope is really a trade, right? Because I think Rashee Rice is really promising. I also think it's very interesting, and I'm not the guy who tries to second guess NFL coaches. I'm not saying that. I think it's really surprising that they're using him from the slot and Sky Moore is like an outside receiver. Because that is not you just look at the set of traits that Rashee Rice has, right? He's got size. Vertical was over 40 inches at the combine, right? He's got downfield outside receiver traits, and he's lining up in the slot, and it's been mostly the same thing over and over again, and it's been successful because it's Pat Mahomes. His snaps are trending in the right direction. His opportunities are. He's had a couple of nice little improv moments with Mahomes, which I think really builds, credibility. He's seeing the field enough to matter. So I think he's also second on the team in targets, and I think he's tied with Travis Kelce in red zone targets. So that's all really encouraging. He's also not Tyreek Hill. He's not somebody whose ceiling I think is, one of the wide receiver ones in our game. I don't know if they can. I don't know if anybody shakes loose and they can trade for somebody. That would be the dream. Like if you have invested in Patrick Mahomes and you're one of those guys who was like, hey, I'm pulling the trigger on Mahomes in round 2, round 3. You have not been happy to this point in the season, because the reason you do that is you think that Mahomes is going to give you 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns or close to it. And he's been awesome. We're just not on that pace. Right. So that's frustrating. I don't really like Kadarius Toney has already given us the worst primetime game I've ever seen anyone play in week 1. like if he just has a normal bad game, they win. But he had a legendarily bad game and they lose, right? So I kind of feel like the usage that we're getting from Kadarius Toney right now is about all you can hope for. And it's Mahomes, so like you'll get a touchdown every 3 weeks out of it. That's fine if you have to play him, but I wouldn't bank on that turning into Kadarius Toney playing 65% of the snaps and getting, double-digit targets ever. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, he's kind of a gadget guy, and I wish they'd make him more of a regular guy. Because every time he has to make a decision, bad things happen. Like twice in that Thursday night game. Once they did the play where he threw the ball into double coverage. It's lucky it didn't get picked off. Another time where they had him run a zone read and had him decide whether to hand off or keep. Of course, he chose keep. Always choose keep. Just don't have him make decisions. Just have him run routes. Is that make it simple. Keep it simple. I
feel like they're doing a little bit of what they did with, like last year, there was that string of really useful games for McCole Hardman where they just said, we're giving up on you as like a downfield guy, and you're just going to be like our red zone. You're going to be like a little extension of the running game, and we're gonna get you, out wide and get you isolated on players, and we'll let you do your thing. And he had like a little string of
that Niners game last year.
Super useful.
The jet sweepers. I mean, it was awesome to see.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit of that from Toney, but it's not, it's not really a role that you can bank on.
I agree. I don't want to. I've held on to him in one league. I'm like the one league. If I drop him, that's when he takes off and they decide they optimize him somehow. But and also some leagues are so deep that you have to hold on to him anyhow. It's just frustrating. Let's move on to the tight ends real quick. A couple of guys I want to talk about. Hey, your Subway alumni, your Chicago friends. Michael Mayer had a big day again for the Raiders. He's ascendant. Is this something we can build on here? Is this like, okay, he's starting, the game's coming to him now. Can we start him with any sort of regularity?
Yeah, I think you can probably think of him alongside, he's had, one of the issues for him is he's had some run blocking hasn't been great. Blocking generally hasn't been great. So he's probably got to overcome that to see like the kind of playing time that you really want. He's also like Jacoby Myers has played so well, and obviously Devontae is Devontae. So it's not a situation where there's a path for him to be like the number 2 target on the team. I don't think that can happen. So we really need to start believing in the Raiders as an offense that can provide like 3 starting quality pass catchers. If you just want to think of him in that same tier with like Logan Thomas and Luke Musgrave, and you want to add Mayer to that, and I don't know, he's in that big middle ground of tight ends for me now, which is an elevation from where he was a couple weeks ago. So that's good, right? Like he is, I will grant that he is ascendant, but he is maybe not yet like the all-purpose tight end that the Raiders would want him to be. And again, he's going to have to, he's well behind Myers and Adams in the pecking order. So that is another issue.
Yeah. So like I have Mayer 10th this week ahead of Logan Thomas and Cole Kmet. I could be talked out of it, I suppose. Or I have him ahead of Ertz and Higbee too, as a point of reference. But they're kind of all part of the glob. They're all part of, to steal Paul Sporer's term, and it's been stolen by, I think, Scott White after that. So I'll steal it now too. I'll steal it again. But and that was a baseball term, but I'm going to make it for every sport. No, but there you go. I think he's just part of that general mess. Not quite.
And there's going to be like 4 people from that glob who end up finishing as top 10 tight ends this season, and then they're just going to get oversold next year, right? Because I mean, all that really takes is 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, and you're a top 10 tight end.
It's really touchdown luck. Let's be honest. You know, you get that 7 touchdowns in 1 year. Oh, he was a really good player. Yeah. Then he
he was the tight end 4. Yeah.
And then he gets 3 touchdowns the next year. And then you feel great sadness. Are you good to rip through a few of these questions here?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Lindorphins asks, Ridley and Warren for Gibbs and Dotson in half-point PPR. Which side you got?
That's a little bit of Ridley and Warren. It's probably Ridley and Warren for me. I'm not trying to find new and interesting ways to get invested in Jahan Dotson. I have quite enough Jahan Dotson. Thank you.
Yeah. I like the concept of buy low, but the practice of it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, especially in football, where it's not a long-term sport. It's, I need this right now. I have 6 teams on buy. You know, it's like, I have to start this guy. And I don't even know if I can start Gibbs this week. I know he's trending towards playing, but what does that even mean?
That's the other thing. You also know that when David Montgomery comes back, and I have full confidence that he'll come back because he has beat every recovery timeline his entire career, right? Like he did it earlier this season. He did it with the Bears. When he comes back, that's a very clear hierarchy, right?
Yes.
Like the Lions have laid it out for us. There's no doubt about it at this point. There's no singular role that Gibbs has that he's gonna take away from Montgomery. So yeah, I really like the Ridley side of that.
All right. Sam asks, is Kyler Murray coming back this year? Still worth stashing on IR?
Yeah, if you've got an IR spot, it's I think it's worth it. I don't think he's about 10 months now from the injury itself. I don't think that you are going. I think there's zero chance that we get like the 800 rushing yard, 10 touchdown, electric in the open field version of Kyler Murray. I would not anticipate that because I mean, just the timing of the injury and the nature of the injury. But sure, there's a chance that he comes back. The Cardinals have been, to their great credit, they have been much more competitive than I think most people thought they would be. Like, we came into the season having jokes about whether they were even trying to win. They're definitely trying to win. So yeah, I can absolutely see him coming back at like 75% of himself.
Yeah. But always a lesson there is players play, coaches coach, GMs tank,
Yes.
Owners tank. But the people they put out there, they're still going to try. And I actually think I think Gannon's a good coach. I think that he gets them playing hard. I think they just wear down. I think that they're not deep. You see a lot of their fourth quarter deficits ridiculous because they just don't have the horses. So I think that's what happens there. Alex asks, which side wins, Bijan and Flowers or Jacobs and Hawkinson?
Oh man. Okay, I should almost recuse myself from this because I obviously I'm an Iowa guy, so I have a great fondness for Hawkinson. I am also a Josh Jacobs guy. I've loved him since he came into the league. I thought he was just a wow player as a rookie. I was not the least bit surprised by his season last year. It is tough sledding for Josh Jacobs right now. Like, you want to talk about a guy who once a game is met in the backfield at the point of the handoff by an edge rusher or somebody who gets through the line. Like, that line is not playing well, and he's just getting. And Josh Jacobs is good enough that sometimes he can eke out 2 yards when he's touched in the backfield, but it's just no way to make a living. So I think we can count on him getting 20 touches a week and cobbling together a decent fantasy season. But I would certainly want the upside of Bijan here.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah, I think that's the route I'd go. I'm a little concerned on how teams are playing Bijan and how the Falcons are playing him, but I still would go that route too.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Zay Flowers, who I think has really been a revelation. And I got a little bit of Zay Flowers, not enough, but he's pretty clearly the number one there. So that's not just a throw in this deal.
Yeah. Couple of news notes before we sign off here. Deshaun Watson confirmed that he has like a rotator cuff strain. He doesn't know if he's going to be able to play or practice this week. Kind of in this limbo again this week. And we were just talking about Kyler Murray. Ian Rappaport 5 minutes ago reported that Cardinals are opening up the practice window today on him. So
fun,
interesting. We might see him sooner rather than later.
We may look back on week 7 and say that Kyler Murray was the guy that you should have added while we were all adding Zach Evans and Jordan Mason and Keontae Ingram and all those other guys too. Yeah.
Yeah, we might be looking back and say it was more about the friends we met in week 7 instead of the players we started. Who knows? Andy, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your expertise. Always a pleasure to catch up with you. And anytime you need me, let me know. But always happy to have you on the RotoWire podcast.
Love talking to you, man. Thank you.
All right. Andy Behrens, everybody. Tomorrow, of course, we've got Mario and John on the RotoWire podcast. Thanks as always for listening. Go check out rotowire.com/pod for a free trial. Peek behind the paywall. Check out my rankings, Mario's articles, John's articles, Jim Coventry's stuff, all of our good stuff there. rotowire.com/pod. Thanks to Circa for their sponsorship. Take care.